Welcome, Intro to Computing, to the vector trace exercise using a free vector editor called Vectr. And that's actually, we found that right through the Pixlr site. One thing I just want to point out here is under my Warren, if you go to Documents and Resources, and currently this semester it's exercise 6, vector trace, and that's where we'll upload some links and actually upload a file. And I'm just going to go to Documents and Resources right now, and here's the instructions. So I'll just pull out the instructions, and it's in PDF format. That way in Chrome it opens up in a window, so you could just kind of scroll through it. Keep in mind, here's all kinds of information about vector artwork. I'm not going to go over too much about vector artwork right now because I want to keep the video not so long, but it's a little different than pixel-based artwork because we're working with paths and anchor points, kind of like Adobe Illustrator. So this explains some of that, and I'm going to go open it up and just kind of show you. So I'm going to go to Pixlr. Now we're not using Pixlr, we're using the free vector editor. Now what you would do when you get here is you would use online, and when you go use online, you would actually create up and sign an account. Now I already have an account, so I'm going to log in, but I would encourage you to sign up. You could use your Google account, or you could just use an email and a password and you have an account, and that's all you need. You don't even get emails from them or anything. So I'm going to log in. You don't have to be real super secretive about your password or anything here. So this is kind of your work area here that we're working in. There's kind of tools over here, there's layers over here, and you're going to get kind of different options here when you start working. And these things, I'll go over these when it's time to start working, but there is a save area here under file settings. There's an export area when you're ready to kind of export it. You can either save a link and paste a link, so if someone could just look at your link online to your saved version online, or you can physically download a file and then upload a file. And this is just the new file icon. So this is our work area here, and again, I haven't used this a whole lot, so I'm not an expert at this little area. This is new to me, but it's nice to kind of experiment with some vector artwork. Some of the tools in vector artwork are going to be the rectangle, rounded rectangle, ellipse or circle, pen tool, pencil tool we probably won't use much, and then text tool we might use a little. And if we needed to upload an image, you might say, well, why would we upload an image if we're creating images? Well, we're actually going to trace an image. But first I'll just kind of go over some basics, and I have like two kind of practice exercises, and I do these with Illustrator too, just to get used to working with vector artworks. The first one I'm going to do is going to be the square to Clover exercise. I'm going to click on my rectangle here, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle, or a square I should say. It's going to be a square. Now it's green right now, that just happens to be what it came out to, but you could go here and change it to any color if you want. That's called the background color, and you can see that's checked. There's no border checked and there's no shadow checked, so there's no border and shadow on it. And just click off to get that thing out. Now keep in mind that when you select this, first of all, this is the bounding box, and you've seen this in other programs. You grab on a corner, you could resize it, you could squash it, you grab the middle one, you could squash it down and all that. That's just resizing stuff. And we're going to do a little bit more than that. Now what we're going to do, that's the bounding box, and you can see what happens. You could rotate it, and you're going to see little icons when you hover over that. These are not anchor points. We're going to work with anchor points, and what we're going to do is we're going to double click on this. So I'm going to double click on this, and you can see now we have 4 anchor points. They basically connect these straight line segments together. And ignore these little ones. They kind of make round corners. So I'm just going to ignore them for now. We're not really going to use that thing. We're going to try to understand how anchor points really work. That's a little helper kind of thing that rounds off corners if you want. But these are the anchor points, and basically if you grab these, you kind of move them around. You see what they do. You could even highlight 2 of them at once and kind of move them in different directions like that. So those are the anchor points. They're the little connector points that connect this together. Now my square is not perfect, but that's okay. Now what I'm going to do here when I double click on it is I have 4 anchor points. I'm going to add 4 more, and it's very easy to add them. You just hover right in between here and add a point, add a point, add a point, right on the edge, and add a point. So now I have 8 anchor points, and I'm going to drag these in to kind of make a star shape, or like an X shape I should say. It's kind of like a Xbox logo looking thing. So I'm going to drag in here. Now these are all corner points because you can see they're very sharp and they're straight line segments. What we're going to do is we're going to double click on these, and they're going to kind of round the edges, and little handles are going to come out. These little handles kind of work like that, and we're going to eventually pull these out and make them, you can see I'm going to go a little smaller first because they're kind of scrolling my view here, which is kind of Kind of a little frustrating. But anyway, let me round these off first. Double click, and double click. That makes those little handles come out. Let me do that again. And it makes those little handles come out. And I'm going to zoom out by using this. That way it won't scroll my screen. And I'll make these kind of like Clover things. And I didn't get on it that time. And I want to click on it to see the handles, then I'll pull the handles out. And you can see it's starting to look like a Clover. Click on there to bring the handles, and I'll stretch the handles. So I stretch the handles. And keep in mind, these handles, they kind of work like a seesaw. They're kind of connected together. So if one goes up, the other goes down. And this is my little Clover right now. And if I click off of this, that's the whole object again. So if I want to scale the whole object, I can. And I actually want to make it a little smaller. So now I'm just seeing the whole object. Now I'm scaling it. I could rotate it. But I'm not seeing the anchor points anymore. If I want to see the anchor points, I double click on it. Now what we're going to do next with the anchor points is double click on these. I'll double click, and then I'm just going to shorten the handles a little. I'll bring them in towards the center. Double click, shorten the handles, and I'll bring both in towards the center. Double click, bring both in towards the center. And double click, bring both in towards the center. And now I have this kind of like SpongeBob flower looking thing. And I'm going to go here and save it. And I'll just call it Clover. I'll just call it Clover for now. And I'll do save file name. And that's saved. Now what I'm also going to do, this is my first exercise, I'm actually going to go here to export. And I'll hit the export button. And I can download this, or I can actually just share a URL. I'm going to do that first for this one. I'm just going to share it, and all it does is just copy the URL. You might say, well, where are you going to put the URL? Well, I'm going to go to my Warren, and I'm going to go into coursework, and I'm going to go into my assignment for Vector Trace, and I'm going to go to add a comment, and I'm going to hit the link. You could just paste it in here, but I'm going to add a link, and I'm going to paste the URL there. And I'm even going to change the text to display, so it's not this real long URL. And I'll just make it, Clover graphic. That's just what it'll display. And I'll also change the target to be new window. And I'll hit OK. And then that way, I'll save it. That way, I could go in there, click on that, and it'll actually show your Clover. And I could see that you did it. So we're going to put another one. So I'm going to go back to Vector. I'll close out of this little area here. And I'm going to go file new. I'm going to make a new file. And this time I'm going to make a heart. And I'm going to make it out of a circle. So I'm going to go to a circle here. And it's kind of a big red circle right now. Now one thing I just want to point out, if I want to put a gradient on it, they have different colors here. They have linear gradient, which is kind of this up and down gradient. And if I click on this kind of this swatch here where the color is, it'll show me my gradient. See, I can move this down. I can move it up. I could rotate the gradient. It's kind of going from black and white right now. Matter of fact, I could even go on this end of it where it has the black, and I could change that to red, and I could leave this one on white. I'm actually going to leave that like that, and I'm going to make it a radial gradient. And then I'll click back on this again, and that way when I make it a radial gradient, I'll grab this end, and I'll make this thing smaller, and I'll move this in the middle, so it's kind of like it radiates from the center with this kind of white color. And if you need it bigger, you can make it bigger. And I'll just leave it like that for now. Even this red color, if I want to make it a little less red, maybe a little more kind of pinky, I could go towards the end here a little bit. I'll leave it like that a little bit. And just kind of click off of that. So there's my circle, regardless of the gradient right now. And then when you click on here, that's the whole shape, just like the rectangle. You could scale that circle. You could grab it and move it around. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the anchor points, and I'll actually make this a little bit smaller so it fits in my window nicer. And I'm going to double click on it so I see the anchor points. There's 4 anchor points. And these are different because if I click on them, you'll see that they already have handles extended. They're made for curves. This handle controls that part of the curve. This handle controls that part of the curve. And they're all even all around. That's how they make a circle. But you can see if I go up or down, they kind of work like a seesaw. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to move this anchor point down and kind of squash it like that. And then I'm going to move the whole shape up. And I can do that while the anchor points are there, although now it'll treat it as one object, so I have to double click again. And I'm going to move this down, and I mentioned like this being an alien head. I don't know if it looks like an alien head, but I'm going to start with that. And what I'm going to do is just try to make a heart. And I'll move this down even a little more. And I'll click on this so I see my, now these are, it's hard to see the handles because it's in red right now. There, now it's easier to see the handles. I'll just do that. Double click again. There's my handles. What I want to do is I want to drag one handle up. And I'll drag it up so it kind of creates like this little heart shape up here. Now if I drag the other handle up, the other side's going to go down again. So I want to leave one side up, and then what you can do, on Windows you would hold Control, on the Mac you hold Command, and what you would do is if you hold Control or Command, you drag the other side up and make it symmetrical. And now you can see it's kind of like a heart shape up there. And then I could go down here, and it has handles there. If you don't want the handles, if you double click, it'll convert it to a corner point and it'll suck in those handles. And now it makes it like a heart shape. And then I could drag this down just a little bit, or I could drag this one back up just a little bit. And what I'll do is I'll go back, I'll give it that radial gradient again, and I'll just change this center because I had made it green for some reason when I was messing around with it, and I'll make it white again. And now I have this nice little heart shape here. And one last thing, I think I mentioned it, you don't have to do this, but if you take your text tool right here, and I'm just going to drag and make a text box almost as wide as the heart, and there's my text, and I'm just going to say, you know, Happy Valentine's, since it's kind of that time of year. And I'll type Happy Valentine's, and I'll highlight that. And if I double click on here, I almost have to get off and then click on the box. There's my text layer here. And if I click over here, that helps me select my text layer. And then what I could do is I could change the font. Let's see if we have to highlight it or if we could just go up. It'll just go up without even highlighting the text. And I'll keep going up here, and actually I'll choose a font. I'll go down here and look for something really like thick, like this Alpha Slab. And then I'll keep making it bigger. I could keep clicking here and making the font bigger. I'm just clicking up on there until it goes as far as it can. You could even make it centered. And what I'll do is I'll make the color white. And you might say, why make it white? Now you're not going to see it. I'm going to move it down here, in here, and maybe I'll make it a little smaller, and I'll put a little border on it. I'll just check border, and I'll make sure it's black, and that makes it stand out a little bit from the gradient. And then I'll even put a little drop shadow on it. I'll just check shadow down here, and it's hard to see. You'd have to zoom in a little bit to see the shadow. There's the kind of the drop shadow there that I just put on there, and I'll increase it a little, increase the offset, and even increase the blur a little bit. And now I'll zoom back again. And that's all I need. That's all I want for this little practice. We turned a circle into a heart, and we threw Happy Valentine's in there. So what I'm going to do is I'll go here and I'll just call it heart, and I'll do save file name. And then what I'll do is I'll go to export, and I'll just copy the URL for that. And I'll go back to my Warren, and I already have a comment here. I'll just edit it, hit enter or return, and add another one, insert a link, paste my hyperlink, change this to be heart, make sure this opens in a new window, hit OK. Now I have two links in here to two practice exercises that I worked in, my Clover graphics and my heart, and I could call it heart graphics, whatever I want to change it to, but that's fine for now. And the last thing we'll do is we're actually going to upload, we're going to trace a graphic from something online and kind of trace a shape. Here's one here that I already did, and I'll just show you this, and that's kind of what it looked like. So I'm going to do something like that again real quick just to show you the process. I'll try to stick with something really simple. But that's a ping file, and you can see it's transparent, and I uploaded it, and that's what you're going to do, something like that. You're going to physically download it, then upload it once you're done with it. So, but I'm going to do that in the next video. I don't want to do that all in one video. So for part 2, I'm going to do the trace. Part 1 was just the Clover graphics and the heart graphic, and then for part 2, I'm going to do the animal trace.